Hi everybody, it's Paula from Paula Quilting. Welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be working on another scrap buster slash batting scraps buster, because I will be using the leftovers from the squaring up the quilt to complete this project, and I'm going to be making a boxed pouch, and it's going to be a very easy one. If I can do it, you can do it too. For after project comments and suggestions, stay till the end of this video. My kids decided after last camping a month ago that they are big enough to go, in the morning to sort themselves on their own, and they've asked for a nice toiletry pouches so they can put, their own stuffs inside and go and sort themselves. So that's what I will be making today. One will be in the colors of blue, and one will be in the colors of red. That's the colors my boys like, so special request, I have to fulfill the requirement. So first things, I will be putting those scraps of the batting together. I'm using for batting actually low pile fleece, but you can use whatever batting you've got, and I will make them into the rectangles, approximately 14 by 10 inch in the size, and then I will trim them after I've quilted them. I do have a video showing how to put those bits together in in detail, so I will link it in the description below, and I will just quickly sew them together and we'll get to the next step. Okay, so I've got my rectangles, and I need to use that technique, quilt as you go, to put some fabric on top of it. And really here you can do whatever you like. You can use strings, you can use some scraps, you can use cramps. I've got some random red kind of pieces from my boxes, so I will use that. This is a piece of on the adding tape I've got left over. It's got lots of color red, so I can incorporate it as well. But really it's a great place to use your maybe some sample blocks if you have any. I've got plenty, so there may be more pouches coming, but yeah, you can do whatever you like in this type of the project. You just want to add as much fabric to cover all the rectangle, and we'll be ready for the next step. So those are all the scraps I've pulled out to make the red one, but I already went ahead and prepared the piece in the bluish color, which has been requested by my older son. So as you can see, I just used the strings. The back doesn't look great, but we will be lining it, so I'm not worried. Literally just went with the strings. I had some with the tape here as well, the pieces on the adding tape, so that's all have been added. And I just need to trim those rectangles to the size 13 inches by 9.5. But before I do that, and not to forget, I need to quilt it. As you know, with the quilting, the fabric shrinks, so you don't want to trim it yet. You want to trim it after you've quilted it. I will trim it slightly all around, just to know where my kind of batting is finishing, because I don't want to have empty spot later when I'm actually cutting to the size, and maybe I'll cut from here. That's where I don't want to be. So just trim a little bit that fabric, tidy up with the batting size itself, and then just to add a little bit of backing fabric. And again, it can be something, you maybe have a fabric you don't like that much, but you have a bigger, big enough piece, or you can patch something if you have again some UFO blocks. Yeah, good opportunity to use up lots of different type of scraps here, and also even greater opportunity to practice free motion quilting, because it's a very small piece. You will have a great, let me just use the rotary cutter here, you will have a great control over where you're going, and that gives you that practice piece you can do for the free motion. Now, because of the time that I want to finish them fairly quickly, I will just use the straight stitching type of the quilting. I normally don't kind of quilt straight. I like to use the wavy lines. Again, I've got a nice video about how I've used different type of colors and different sizes of the stitching to have a kind of little bit different effect. I will link it in the description below. So this is exactly what I will do now. I will add the backing fabric and just quilt it. Because this is a quilt as you go type of, it doesn't need a lot of quilting obviously, but it just need enough quilting to keep that backing from shifting when we'll be doing the next step. So let me crack on with that now, and I will come back to you when this is ready to be trimmed and for the next step. Okay, I finished quilting my pieces, and now I just need to trim them to 9.5 by 13 inches. I used for the backing of this a nice kind of funky fabric, and I will use the same fabric to do all the kind of finishes on my bag. And I do that because it will be kind of easier to hide any mistakes if I do with the stitching. And I will I've got cream thread on my machine, so on this cream will kind of hide itself, so it's not going to be that visible. And that's the whole idea, that you know, if we make any mistakes, only we will know about it, because nobody else will notice, so no stress. Also the bag, the pouch I'm going to be making is the version for people who do not have machines, who can go through lots of layers. So there's still going to be obviously layers to go through, but we'll try to make it as easy as possible for machines. So I will be covering kind of few options as I go along, but the option I will be picking for my own pouch will be the one where I will try to, as least as possible, bulk to work through. Now you want to have a nice thick good needle in your machine now, and the best one will be the one for jeans. That's the one I'm using size 14. But if you feel like, you know, you're skipping stitches and it's not going well, not necessarily with this project, maybe with something else we'll be making, just go size up and test that one. There's I bought recently size 16 as well for another project. So, you know, good needle and good thread will take you where you need to be. Okay, so first things first, I need to prepare one of those edges to add the zipper to it. So I've got a piece of that remaining fabric from my backing, and I just want to have a strips 2.5 inches wide cut out of it. Now you can go wider with this one. For that edge, you really can do whatever you want. You can go a little bit narrower or a little bit wider, but I will go with 2.5 inch here. But like I said, if you want more decorative kind of effect with the inside fabric, depends what you're using there, you may go wider as well. It's fun project to kind of improvise and do some funky stuff on it. And I will cut some more of those 2.5 inch strips, because we will need them for inside as well. Those are my strips. So for the first stitching here, the edge, I will start stitching on the left hand side with the 1/4 inch or 1/4 inch-ish. It doesn't have to be exactly 1/4 inch here. I will make it as a normal kind of binding tape here. So I will sew this, I will iron it before I sew, it will be easier. I will sew this with a 1/4 inch, and then I will turn it around and top stitch at the top to make nice edge. Okay, so I only iron 2 strips for now, because again depends which way we'll go with the finishing. We may or may not need to iron more of the strips. So first things first, 1/4 inch on the left hand side, like you would do with a normal binding tape. I just need to move my needle because I don't have my 1/4 inch foot on it, and then I just straight stitch here. Okay, one side stitch, so I can now turn it around, make it nice and flat, and stitch on top of here. and I will be just trying to stitch towards the end of this edge. As you can see, it's small, you know, this side was stitched closer to the edge than this one, but that's the effect I'm going for. I want to have a nice quite white strip of that fabric. Now you can iron it first if it makes it easier, or you can put some clips to hold it for you in place. You can put pins, you know, whatever makes it easier for you, or whatever your method normally is. I will just use a few clips here to hold it for me as I'm stitching. Just you would use whatever you would like. And like I said, I will be stitching as close to the edge as possible, but like I've mentioned, because I'm using bright thread on bright fabric, even if I go a little bit wavy in the places, it's not going to be that you know, visible. Okay, so for those who got machines where they can work with more bulk, you would now take a zipper which is much longer than your edge here. We've got 13 inches, so you want at least, I don't know, 14, 15, just to make it comfortable to sew in. And they would just, you would just sew in this straight away on top of that, you know, on the sides of this equally on the both sides. For those who do not have machines, you know, who can deal with a lot of bulk, to avoid the stitching through that zipper later, we can do one thing. So first, I will mark on my zipper where I've got my 13 inches. With the gold Sharpie here, just for me to be able to see it well. And I'm not measuring from like edge to edge, because I will be cutting it off anyway, and it's easier to sew a zipper when it's not just by like edge here. So let's say I'm starting from here as my 0 point, and my 13 inches is here. So now what I want to do is to not sew over that zipper. I want the zipper to finish earlier. So I will make another mark from the edge, from that where I've got mark 0 here. I will go 3/4 of an inch. So that's my second mark. And I will do the same thing from the other side. I'm just marking towards the inside of the zipper 3/4 of the inch. Again, it doesn't have to be, you know, totally perfect, is good as is. So that's where I want my zipper to finish, and the rest I want to have a fabric. Now to finish at this point, I will need to obviously stitch on that line. So I will just make myself another mark on top of that for 1/4 inch, so that when I put the fabric, and I will show you in a minute what I mean, on top of it, this is where I want the fabric to finish. So 1/4 here, and then 1/4 towards the outside on this side as well. 1/4 inch here. Okay. So I now need some pieces of my binding. I need actually 2 of those for each side, so I just do it in one go. Straighten up that edge. And I need to make it at least about 2 inches long for now. Just for easy, you know, for make it easier to sew. It doesn't have to be exactly 2 inch, but at least, you know, 2 inch-ish. And then I will have 2 of those at the same time. So another 2. I need 2 pairs, because obviously it's for both sides. So what I want to now do, is put one of that at the bottom, at that mark where when I mark that 1/4 inch. So it's not the first one, because that's where I will be my stitching, is that second mark, and then put one on top. And what I will do, I will sew all around that. So let me just put a pin there. And by all around, I mean, well, not all around, on 3 sides. What I mean is I will stitch from here, not going on the zipper, from here, then I will go 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch down. And then I will do the same thing on this side. So again, I've got the right side of the fabric under the zipper on that line where I've marked 1/4 inch seam allowance. Put this one on top, put some pins and to hold it in place, and I will stitch it all around. So let me just do that now. Oh, very important thing before you start doing it, this bit here. So let me take this one out. I would have forgotten it, and I was thinking about it when I started. You want to open the zipper first, and you want to stitch it somewhere to hold it in place. Do it somewhere close to those double lines here where you have your stitching line and your seam line. If you do that now, when you're sewing it in a minute, you know, with the tabs, it will be much easier for you to kind of make sure you're keeping it in place, so it's not like, you know, wide like that when you finish. Just one, you know, zip through. Okay, so you want to make sure that your closing is in the middle of your zipper rather than, you know, on this side, because we will be cutting this part out. So now I can put this one, put the pins and stitch around. So on this side you want to make sure you don't catch the zipper. You just literally want to be on the outside of the zipper. Don't worry if you, you know, a lot outside, it doesn't matter, we will lose it later. Okay, it's stitched. Before I cut out the, you know, the edges, I'll just turn those pieces around just to see how they look. Obviously I want to make sure that they're looking alright before I cut the rest. Otherwise, you know, I won't be able to adjust it anymore. Looks good on this side. And looks good on this side. So I will just move this back again, and I'll just trim the zippers themselves. Again, just push it a little bit and close the zippers. Now I will top stitch it here because obviously I trimmed the zippers. I want to make sure they are secured. So I will just top stitch this edge here on both sides on the zippers. Okay, so that's now ready to be added to our sides. So if you have a if you cannot move your needle, it's good time to put a foot for the zippers now, because you want to be as close as possible to the edge. If you can move the needle, then obviously you can work around it. So I will just trim those sticking out edges here on both of my pieces. And I want to center it on my zipper. Let me close it first just to see where my center is going to be. You can measure it and find the centers. So you could fold it, mark the center here, fold your zippers between the tabs, and you could even make a small, like a notch here. Let me just do it now. I normally eyeball all of the things, but let's just make it right here. So I will make a notch on the zip, but obviously on these pieces I don't want to make notches because that's, I need to have it in full. What I can do instead is just put a pin, or you know, use a marker you can later take off to mark your middle, and then you can align those two things where the notches are, and that's where you need to now stitch through. So as you can see, it will be much better or much easier now to go through it rather than have that bulk there. And I'm just putting the edge of the piece or close to the zipper itself, the teeth, and I'm aligning the stitching against my foot here so it's the same distance all along. Again, bright thread, bright fabric. If something goes wonky, it's not going to be so bad. Okay, so that's where we are at the moment. Pieces are ready. Now what I like to do is prepare now my handle. So I want to have a handle for my kids to be able to handle their bag on the way to the bathroom. So handle, I will cut my piece of fabric about, let's see, will that be enough? Yeah, about 18 inches, and I will make it 4 inches wide, and then I will just do it like a kind of double folded binding tape. So let me just quickly show you what I mean. So what I will do, I will first iron it into half, and then again halves inside, then all of it all together, and that will be my handle. I just stitch all around, top stitch it, and when I fold it into half like this will be my handle. The second small bit I need is a little bit of tab to put on the other side, so when you're pulling your zipper you can hold on to something. It's quite, you know, I think important. So I'm just using my 2.5 inch strip here, and about that would be too much, let's say 5 inches ish. Kind of doesn't have to be exact. So 2.5. I will prepare it exactly the same way. It's just obviously it's going to be narrower because I'm working with 2.5 inch strip, and I will do something like that. Okay, so those two things are done. So we can start putting the bag together. First seam I want to put together is the bottom one, so that's fairly easy to do. I will be stitching with a little bit more than 1/4 inch here, but not 1/2 inch yet, and I will show you why. So just get yourself either needle position, little bit, you know, further away than 1/4 inch, or whatever tools you use to align yourself. I mean, it's not going to be end of the world if you do 1/2 inch, but it's just going to be easier if it's not. So I'm just grabbing my 2.5 inch strip, and I will put it on top of it, right side together with my backing, and I will stitch it all together. Here it's quite thick already, however it's all fabric, there's nothing else there to as an obstacle. It's not you know, much more thicker than you would quilt a quilt, so you should be still okay to go through all of those layers. Just make sure you have, like I said, good needle and good thread. You don't have to worry about the outside edges here. What we want to now do is fold it to the inside, to kind of that top edge to touch the stitching I've done there, and then I will fold it on top of it, and then here I will sew. Basically the second stitch you will be doing, you want to have kind of towards the zipper on top of that previous one. So again, it might be worth using here some either clips or pins. I'm a little bit away from the table when I'm recording, so it's not so comfortable, but it's not so difficult to do when you're doing it. So like I said, just I'm pushing this raw edge of my strip towards the seam allowance there, or towards the stitching. It kind of goes under a little bit, but that means it will be nice and even. Otherwise, you know, if you're just folding it, which you can do as well, it may not necessarily be even. You can also iron it to make it even, and then stitch it, so you don't have to worry about sticking it there. So again, whatever feels more comfortable, but I will just do it this way, and I will stitch it. Like I said, now I want to be at the 1/2 inch away. I like 2.5 inch strip for that, because I feel like it's giving me nice finish. But if you feel it's too wide, then obviously you can go with 2 inch strip. You know, it's your pouch, so you can make a decision there as much as you want. So now when I open it, I've got that quite thick bit, but again, there's only fabric here, there's nothing here to worry about yet. And how I'm folding it, you know, you need to put it on one side, we'll be stitching on the sides here, is that I'm covering that bit where it's that bit kind of from the second row of stitching. So I've got flat edge here, so that's why I was saying that I'm not worried if how it looks here that much, that it's got sticking in part here, because I will cover it now. But before we do that, I want to, so that will be the kind of center of the back here, so that's the seam we just made. On top of it will be our zipper, but I want to add my handle and that small tab I've made. So that's the handle, that's the tab. The tab I want to have on the side on the other side of the close-up I want my handle be at the top of that close-up there. So I will just fold it into half and put on top of that seam here in the middle. I will try in the middle, but if it goes off a little bit, I'm not going to be, you know, crying that much. And I will just quickly tag it with, like, you know, an 1/8 of the inch seam allowance here. I literally just want to keep it in place, so when I'm going to be stitching it all together, it's not going to kind of disturb me, or I will not worry that it's shifting anywhere. So that's one thing, and I will do the same thing on the other side here with my handle. So this seam goes nicely flat here, and I will fold my handle, put the handle inside, and then I will just try to nicely center it here on that seam. I know it feels like lots of fabric there, but again, it's just fabric. There is no, you know, hard stuff there to go through. And now I can center whole of my bag and stitch it together. So if I've opened it, I could possibly make some, you know, measurements and notches where my needles are. But like I said, I'm happy to kind of eyeball it. So you can see now that because we've trimmed that zipper here, let me open it a little bit. That's another thing not to forget to do, just open it up a little bit. Because we've trimmed it, I actually won't be sewing through the zipper now. I will be even though it's quite a lot of layers here, it's all fabric, I don't have to worry with additional, you know, bulk from the zipper. So I'm just aligning it all with that seam at the bottom to make sure it's nicely in the middle, and with the handle I'll put some clips here to hold it in this spot here. And then I will just align the other side in similar way and put some pins here, or you know, clips, whatever you've got. Now we are going to be finishing some of that edge with the tape, but not all of it. So here I won't be putting the tape straight away because it's just going to be waste. So what I want to do is stitch it 1/2 inch here, even though we don't have a tape there yet. Slow down at the bulk, but if you have a good needle, you should not have any issues to go through it. Like I said, we're not sewing through anything hard, it's just fabric. There is no need to backstitch here because we'll be cutting off those pieces, so just make sure, you know, just sew through. Again, slow down at the bulk. But again, we're not sewing through anything hard, it should be fairly easily. If you have to, depending on your machine, I was doing it with my basic machine a long time ago when I was sewing on that. I was just hand cranking places like this, and it works. That's where we are now, so almost there. One more thing to do is now to do our corners here, because obviously we want to make it boxed up, so we need to arrange the corners now. So what I want to do is mark 2 inches square from the edge of the bag to the seam allowance, not to the edge of the bag, to the seam allowance, and that's how they're going to be even. So I'm just going to draw them on all of the corners, 2 inch square from the seam allowance and from the edge of the bag where you don't have a seam there. Okay, I'll just double check my measurements before I cut them, because I've done one pouch where I didn't double check and one corner was wrong. Okay, all good. 2 inches all around, so I can just cut it out now. It's worth mentioning actually here that instead of using that tape to finish off the edges, you could just zigzag them without adding an extra fabric, so that's another option. Okay, we've got the beads ready. Now what I want to do is finish those edges before we start working on the corners, so we can even it out, cut out all of those sticking out parts. And then I'll just take one of my 2.5 inch pieces, and I will do the same thing as I've done on the back seam. Still in this point I don't have to worry about the outside edges, so I will just zip through. So the first seam I will do 1/4, and then the second seam I will do 1/2 inch. Now if I measured everything correctly, when I now put the corners together, it should all nicely match up. And I will do the same thing here as I did kind of in the previous part. So I will sew it with a 1/4 inch first, and I will add tape straight away on top. What you want to make sure is that your tape is sticking out at least a good inch on both sides, and I will show you why. So let's just add that one corner. So 1/4 inch first on the first pass, align it all nicely here. Got my sticking out fabric. It's very important to finish off that edge nicely. Again, there's a bulk here when you've got that kind of finish bit here, but it's all fabric, so should be no issue to go through it. When you're going to do the other side, make sure you're pushing that finish off to the same side. You want to push it away from the zipper, basically going down. It just looks better and will not stop the zipper later. So here I want to first put those edges in. Don't, this edge is here a little bit like on a triangle, so don't worry about kind of matching the angle, how those triangles going. It's very difficult. I've tried a few times, I couldn't work it out. So what you want to just do is just fold them straight like this, and then fold it to like we did before, so to the inside, and then on top of it, and stitch straight. So you might like to use some clips now just to make it nice and tight for you when you're holding it. Just use a pin here just to hold it for me in place. The more you do it, the easier it becomes, but I'm just going to go slowly here to kind of show you step by step. So I folded it in straight here on the edges, not like curve or anything like that. I put the pin here to hold it in place, and then what I want to do is fold it to the inside. I'm not trying to push it now under like I did with that first seam. I just want to finish wherever that edge is finishing, and then I'm going on top of it, and I will just move those pins to hold it for me in place. So I only stitched it a 1/4 inch allowance that first pass, but obviously that's not going to be enough to hold this back nice in place for you. So now you just want to go on the edge of the tape, and that will hold everything nicely for you. Because it's the last stitch here, and there's nothing going on top of that piece, you want to back stitch at the beginning and the end. And that's how my edge is finished here. And I just need to repeat it 3 more times on the other sides of the bag, and the pouch is going to be ready, and I will show you how it looks. Okay, I finished sewing all around. The last thing to do is just to cut off all the sticking out threads. You don't want to have any of those. And I'm ready to turn the bag around. So this is what the edges looks like. Like I said, this seemed to go down on both sides. It just kind of looks a little bit better. And if, like I've mentioned, if you use bright thread or color coordinated thread with your backing and then the strips you're using for finishing off, even if something goes not necessarily perfectly, it won't be that visible. So let's just push it all around all the corners, and voila, the bag is ready. So the handle is on this side. The tab didn't come on like perfectly in the middle, but I'm not worried about it, and the pouch is ready to go. Now what I like about those corner boxed pouches is that you can kind of open them and make like a basket for yourself when you're getting ready. So you can do something like this, and you've got, you know, easy access to everything you've got inside. And then obviously when you want to close it, you're just closing it. You can have that handle done this way, as a strap this way. Now this depends where and how you'll be using your pouches. Like I said, I want to have it, you know, I want to have something hooked to hang it in the tent. So that's why how I've made mine, and obviously it's easy for the guys to make sure they can hold it when they're carrying it around. So I made my handles this way, but you could put the handle here and you would just put them in the seams, the side seams, before you stitch them, similar like we did here, just on both sides. So that's, you know, different type of kind of finish off. So the pouch with the 13 by 9.5 rectangles came to the size of about 5 inches tall and about 4.5 inches depth. And I need longer ruler for this measurement. About from the corner to corner is 7, but it's a little bit more when it kind of that back stretches, about 8 inches in the length. So quite nice big pouch. You can kind of put a lot of things. If you like to have your pouch taller, you could square the box. You know, we've used 2 inches square, but 2.5 inch square here. When you're boxing up, the pouch will be taller and kind of narrower here. So you can play with the measurements and you can play with the shapes. They are quite fun to make. So I probably will be making more of those, and some will be donated for some of the charities I'm supporting. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the Scrappy pouches. As mentioned, you can use up all of the bits and sorts around your sewing room to make those. But also, those are great for the gifts. If you use holiday fabrics, coordinated holiday fabrics, you can give them at any, you know, time of the year. And obviously, things like birthdays and other anniversaries, it's a great idea to give this one as well. You can put, obviously, I don't know, lots of chocolates inside for recipient or anything else you feel the recipient may like. So, you know, makes a great package as well as a part of the main gift. Thank you for joining, thank you for watching, and see you next time.